Hello everyone, I'm Jasper and this is JJ Vids. Today I'm going to be showing you guys a review of the sound system I installed in this car right here. In the front of my car, where I'm going to go over some of the details that I did in order to set up this system the way I did. So the first thing I'm going to start off with when I get in here, I'm going to start off with the head unit. So obviously I did an aftermarket head unit in here. So this head unit in particular right here, this is a Kenwood, let's see if I can zoom in right there. Yep, a DMX 957 XR. And what this head unit is, it's a double DIN Apple CarPlay wireless head unit. So you can do Apple CarPlay on this head unit without plugging in at all. It'll automatically connect all wirelessly, and it's a very nice feature for me to have because all I have to do is just turn on the car and my phone automatically gets synced up and paired with the stereo and the system, so I can immediately go into playing whatever music I want. So that was a great upgrade for me to have the Kenwood DMX 957 XR double DIN head unit. So I'm going to go over with you guys the speaker setup that I chose to go with, and what I chose to go with were these two-way Focal Flaxline 6.5-inch mid-bass speakers, and then I went with the tweeters, and I did that obviously on both sides. So these Focal speakers are mounted in the factory position where the factory sound system on this car would have been. It was a pretty big deal for me to build this sound system without cutting any panels, going extremely custom, and just going completely crazy. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep the OEM characteristics of this car. So the reason I went with the Flaxline speakers right here is because they're a little bit thinner than the more topper end Focal speakers. So Focal has three different speakers. They have their performance speakers, the Flaxline speakers, and then the K2 Kevlar speakers. And I really wanted to go with the K2 Kevlar speakers because they have a little bit better of a lower range, but those K2s are way more thick than these ones are right here. And if I wanted to install them in this door panel, I would have had to cut this whole grill out and put a wooden extender, and it would have looked all messed up, and it would have compromised your leg room right here as well. You don't really have that much leg room here, so I really wanted to keep this OEM as deep into the door as possible. So the Flaxline was basically the most performance I could get to fit in this OEM placement right there. So that's the reason I went with the Focal Flaxline speakers. I did the same thing in the rear as well. For the IS300, they did not come with speakers in the rear doors. The speakers are actually in the trunk over there, and they fire backwards off of the rear trunk lid. So I'm going to go show you guys that right now. And two more things I have to show you. I also added this bass knob right here for my subwoofer, so if I don't want to be slapping too hard, I can always just turn off the sub whenever I want. And then the second thing I'm going to show you is that I also Dynamatted or sound insulated this whole entire car. So on the front of this car, there's no sound insulation because you're never going to catch me sitting in the engine bay of this car, so no need to Dynamat that. So I'm going to show you guys a comparison of what a Dynamat panel or a sound insulated panel and a non-sound insulated panel sounds like. So this right here, this hood, sounds pretty hollow. Same thing with this fender, sounds pretty hollow. Now if we move up a little bit more on my car, like this front door right here, this is a sound insulated door, so look at the difference here. Solid as a rock. And same thing with this panel, or should I say mid door, and then same thing with this whole rear side of the car. I mean, I did every single part of this car Dynamat. It's all solid as a rock. And then in the back right here on the tailgate, I actually did double Dynamat. That's really, really solid because of the pretty powerful sub I have back here. So I'm going to open this up for you. And what I have here, I have a JL Audio 12W7AE subwoofer in a high output Pro Wedge boxes, which is what JL calls it. And this subwoofer is a pretty special sub because this has been around, this same design has been proven for over 20 years, and this sub in particular, you can't actually just go and buy in a store. These are all made to order subs in Florida. So for me, it took me over a year to be able to acquire this sub just because of the back orders and how long it took them to actually make this sub. So this is a pretty special sub in terms of rarity, but in my opinion, this sub is special because of just the way it sounds. I mean, it isn't a sub that's like a Rockford Fosgate where it's just gonna slap you in the back of the face. This is a subwoofer that really acoustically mends with the overall stereo of your car. So if you have nice speakers in this car, this subwoofer is going to complement those speakers, or this isn't going to overpower the speakers. If you kind of understand what I'm saying. If you're a sound system guy, you will. But I'm going to go over a little bit more in detail the box of this and why the box of this subwoofer is so special. So if you look at it, it looks like it's a sealed box. It doesn't look like there's a port anywhere, but actually there is a port. If I put the camera up here, if I tilt it up here, and if I put my finger up here, I can actually put my whole hand all the way up in there, and this whole entire top area is one giant port. And I'm going to post a picture right here of the design of how this sub actually works. I'm not a scientist, I don't really know exactly how the law of ohms work, but however they designed this box, it works wonders. This thing thunders, it's amazing. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to push this subwoofer back. I'm going to fold down my back seats right here, and I'm going to open up the spare tire compartment in this car so I can go a little bit more in depth of how I set up the amplifiers and how I set up the capacitor in this car. So let me get that set up for you guys. So now that I got the subwoofer pushed back a little bit, now I can actually show you guys what's underneath the spare tire compartment right here. And the way I have this set up, I have all my amplifiers that run my whole system and my capacitor set up underneath the spare tire compartment. And the best part is that I actually got to keep my spare tire in there, so I didn't have to really compromise on anything. So I'm going to explain to you guys what all these amplifiers do and mean. This amplifier right here, the skateboard amplifier, this is my JLW7 amplifier for my subwoofer, only for that subwoofer. And then this amplifier is for my speakers front and rear, including these guys right here. And then this right here is a capacitor that powers both. It converts my 0 gauge into two 4 gauge wires that power both this JL amplifier, the JL subwoofer amplifier, and the JL speaker amplifier. So let me go a little bit more into detail on what each amplifier actually does. This JL amplifier, this is called a JL 1200/1 V3 amplifier. And basically what that means is that this amplifier is 1200 watts, 1200 true watts /1, which means it's a 1-channel amp. It's only channeling my subwoofer right here. And then the V3 is basically the version of this amplifier right here. So they used to make a 1000 series of this amplifier. Now that was the V2 and the V1. Now the V3, they upgraded the internals, so now it's a 1200 watt amplifier. And this right here is the latest and greatest. This right here is a JL Audio 300/4 V3 amplifier. Basically what that means is 300 true watts. It's a 4-channel amp for your mid-range and your high-range, all your speakers. And it is the version 3 of this amplifier as well, which just basically means it has the upgraded internals. It's a little bit more powerful than the previous generations ones. And this capacitor right here, in order for me to fully explain this to you, I'm going to actually have to come to the front of my car and explain to you how I have my wiring set up here. So here I have my battery, which is obviously where I get all my power for the system from. I have a 0 gauge running straight from the battery. I got this gnarly fuse holder right here, another 0 gauge that runs through my Firewall, underneath my carpet right here, underneath the seat, and then basically I have it trickled back behind this panel right here, and the 0 gauge wire pops out right where this Rockford Fosgate capacitor does. And what this capacitor does, it basically splits the one 0 gauge wire into two 4 gauge wires, which allows me to only use one wire to snake from the front of the car to the very back, but it still allows me to power both this amplifier and this amplifier off of only one wire instead of having to run 2 or 3 wires from the hood all the way to the back. So now I only have a 0 gauge running from front to back, and then I have a 4 gauge running from the capacitor to my subwoofer amp, and then a 4-gauge running from my capacitor to my speaker amp. And as you can see right here, I also have a 4-gauge ground and RCAs running out of this. Those RCAs run straight to my factory or to my aftermarket head unit up there in order for the head unit to know what signals it needs to send to the amplifier in order to, you know, produce music. And then same thing goes for right here. I have a 4-gauge wire back there, 4-gauge power and a 4-gauge ground. It's going to be really hard to see that, but I also have two RCA cords that run from this amplifier because I have 2 sets of focal flax line speakers. So one set of RCAs is for my rear focal flax line speakers, and then my other set of RCAs is obviously for the front set of speakers. So that's pretty much a rough overview of how I have the system set up. I'm going to show you guys how it sounds now, but I'm going to have to go to a different venue because I'm going to get a lot of complaints when I turn on this sub, so stay tuned. So it took a little longer than expected to find a spot to do this. I mean, this sound system sounds so loud to the point to where most places I go, the people just end up getting really annoyed and, you know, asking me to leave. So here I got a nice open field, got word from the officer, we're good to go from him. We have a nice open space here, so I don't think we should be annoying anyone too much per se, but I'm going to show you how this subwoofer hits. Now it's never going to convey through the camera how hard it actually hits because I mean, it's just never going to happen. This microphone isn't good enough, but I will promise you in person, this is a thundering sound system. I mean, when you'll see this subwoofer hit, it has about an inch of play from where it sits right now to how far it gets extended out because that's how hard it hits. But I'm going to do 2 different songs for you guys. My first song is going to be more of like a bass-oriented song. It's going to complement the sub a lot more. And then the second song, it's going to be a little bit more of a reggae type of song. It'll cover more of the whole, it'll cover the high, mids, and lows. So without further ado, we're just going to kind of let the system speak for itself a bit.
I ain't never throw no shit, I grind hard and patiently waited. I gambling with my life, but I promise I never been to Vegas. In the hood shooting dice, clutching on a dirty 3. Like a zebra.
So like I was telling you guys before with the law of ohms, when I shut this trunk lid right now, it's going to make all the force from that subwoofer bounce off the trunk and go forwards into the car. Because this is an open air car, it's going to make it sound way louder than it is right now with this open. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to show you guys in the car. Yeah, that's loud. So watch this.
Young nigga with a old, so look in my eyes, you see pain. All these scars on my body, covered it with diamond chain. 100K cash, I can act an ass with Johnny.
All right, so now that's definitely the bass. I think that's good enough. It definitely shows what it can do. I kind of describe this subwoofer as the Hellcat of subwoofers. I mean, this thing has way too much power to use on a day-to-day basis, but it's nice to have the power when you need it. That's kind of the way I describe this subwoofer. But now I'm going to do a little bit more of a reggae-oriented song. All right, you guys, so I think that's a great place to end off today's video. Not only I showed you guys how I built the system, I also performed the system on a couple different songs for you guys. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next video. Cheers.